My name is Lauren O'Neill, and I am VP of Marketing and Design at the Parkinson Foundation, Western Pennsylvania. So my job is to spread the word about the resources and events that we offer to Western Pennsylvania. How do I do that? Well, I'm working on it, but on our website, on social media, on our email, flyers that you get in the mail, anything that's printed, I'm trying to get the word out. But what's important too is word of mouth. So all of you here today, if you have a great experience, share that with your friends and family, because we really want to make sure that everyone in this area knows that we're here to support them. And I also have to do a plug too, if you want to follow us on Facebook or social media, page 16 in your booklets, that would be great, or sign up for our email listserv. After Cheryl's 30-minute session, there will be 10 minutes for questions, and then we'll break for lunch. Please stay in your seats if we have volunteers who are going to serve the lunch to you, and we need to make sure we see your name tag. So like this, not okay, because you got to see the color so that we know exactly what we're going to serve to you. And then also during lunch break, feel free to check out the vendor village. There's a lot of great resources there, and you can ask questions, a lot of free stuff, and check it out. Our next presenter represents so many in the PD community, myself included, the role of caregiver. Cherryl will be sharing her personal account of being a spouse and care partner to someone with Parkinson's. As someone whose mother had Parkinson's for 30 years, I can attest that Parkinson's is a family disease and impacts more than just the person with PD. Caregivers' roles adapt and change as the disease evolves, but their support and love only continue to grow for their loved one as they navigate the PD journey together. Cherryl Choi is a program manager at a nonprofit hospital and volunteers as a Team Fox member. She lives in Bolingbrook, Illinois, and continues to work full-time and be a full-time mom to her 2 kids. Cherryl is especially proud of her role as care partner, spouse, and pacer to her endurance athlete husband, Jimmy Choi, living with young-onset Parkinson's disease. Cherryl has also led fundraising events alongside Jimmy, successfully raising more than $800,000 for Parkinson's research. So let's welcome Cherryl Choi.
Well, thank you all. Good morning, or close to noon now. All right. Yes, it's the green one, right? All right, everyone, thank you, Lauren. I was just like you, I was just thinking the same way with Jim, like, can he come with me to work right before I present in front of my bosses, because that calmed me down before I had to come back up here, but then also hyped me up, right? So thank you so much. But as Lauren said, my name is Cherryl Choi. I am a mom of 2 teenagers. I work full-time as a program manager at a nonprofit hospital. And I've been married for 23 years with my high school sweetheart, Jimmy Choi. Now, you guys may know him as the American Ninja Warrior, Guinness World Record holder, or the crazy guy on TikTok. But I know him as Jimmy. So he was my best friend, my prom date, and the guy who will get me ice cream when I have that bad day at work. Thank you to the Parkinson's Foundation of Western Pennsylvania. Thank you for having us, for inviting me to share my story and actually letting me tell my side of the story first before Jimmy. So I appreciate that, but I'll share with you my pacer life, what I'll go through as that care partner version of living with Parkinson's. So let's start at the beginning of our married life. I am an engineer by background, so I think in mind maps, for those of you that are familiar with that. So this was my mind map. When we were getting married, we really thought we had life figured out, or I thought I had life figured out. In my mind, the key things that we had to plan for was our family, our career, our health, what are we going to do for fun, right? We knew we were going to have kids sometime in the future, so we started out slow. We had our pet, small pet Max, small dog, and then, we were very into our careers. So I'm dating myself and showing our age, but we were in the dot-com boom when we started our careers, and Jimmy was a technology consultant. He was out there traveling the road, and we were, I was looking for that all-impressive title, right, to get up there, climbing that proverbial career ladder. And for fun, it was all about hanging out with our friends. We had big get-togethers all the time, lots of, it's not the big wild parties, but we were, we loved having everyone over, having great food, and just having a great time with everyone as much as possible. And whenever we could, we traveled. We would go to, San Francisco, wine country, we'll do the Las Vegas, maybe gambling here and there, and then a last-minute trip to Paris, because back then you could do that without kids, right? So that was fun. And Jimmy was, actually, if we were home, he wasn't home. He was out on the golf course, so I was the proverbial golf widow. He wanted to be the next Tiger Woods. So all the fun stuff. We thought we had it all figured out. We've got life, we've got our home, and in that world of adulthood, you got the big mortgage, right? You got our house. So that's what we thought we had to figure out and get going. And then we didn't. At the age of 27, Jimmy was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's. And just like that, all the things that I thought I had a clear path and what we were going to do didn't seem to make sense anymore. I wasn't sure what life was going to be like. I wasn't sure even are we going to have kids? Because how do you have kids with somebody who has Parkinson's? You have to take care of with Parkinson's. So it took him a while to share that devastating diagnosis with me. And probably when he told me, I don't know, but I probably had this shocked look and very scared look, and he quickly told me, no, we're gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. There's medication for Parkinson's. There's no cure, and I knew that, but there's medication. And I took that cue from him, like, oh, okay, there is medication, so he could be okay. He seems very calm about it. Mind you, he's had months to digest this, and I'm just coming to it. But I took that cue from him. I looked at him like, okay, he doesn't seem to be worried about it. He's not talking about it, so I will do the same. He seemed so certain, so I did the same. He looked okay. There might be some tremors, but so I wasn't going to worry about it. There's medication. We can keep going, what we thought life was going to be. But I really only saw what he wanted me to see. I think we saw that iceberg before, but all I saw for Parkinson's, for him, was that tremors, and he had some balance issues, and we'll talk about that because he started walking with a cane, and then the medication that he was talking. So there's all this black stuff underneath. I didn't understand any of it, knew nothing else about Parkinson's, and actually I didn't really study it either. But I knew, of course, looking back, there's so many things that were really lurking beneath that surface. He seemed fine, so we just kept going as if nothing was different. And for the next 8 years of his diagnosis, we tried to keep Parkinson's to the side. I wanted to keep that life that I had pictured way back then. It's a bad habit, right? It's like you had this picture and you keep wanting to try to bring it back the way you had pictured it to be. But when I look back on it now, how many years, 20 plus years later, it was our dark years. I don't really understand it. It's sort of the same life, but it was forced. It was forced, it was disconnected, and it felt false in many ways. Job-wise, he was a tech consultant, but I took on this stable job. I didn't know it then, but very consciously, I took the stable job, or the safe way, because long-term wise, I was very afraid financially. How do we keep going? Because I didn't know, honestly, how long Jimmy could work with PD. I don't think he could still be the next CEO or whatever he wanted to be at that big tech firm anymore. And so I wanted to make sure that I had a stable job and we had insurance and we can afford the house that we were living in and provide for the 2 kids. I didn't go after that passionate role that I was thinking back then that I wanted to do. I had to be the one that kept working. The health stuff was the same. We did the insurance thing, but really that was it. The stuff that we tried to do was, I would say, tried to have fun and tried to still travel, but honestly, with toddlers at the time, it was very difficult, and I'll be honest, sometimes it felt like 3 toddlers, because with Jimmy at that time, he could get very moody. So vacationing and traveling was not fun. It was exhausting for me, because I had to figure out, what the 2 kids needed. I had to figure out what Jimmy needed, and hopefully I had time to figure out what I needed. And really where it came to is I was so happy when I go back to work, because when I was at work, I only had to worry about me. There wasn't anybody else. So that shouldn't be the way. I look back and it's like, that's not the right thing to do when you're thinking about work and vacation and family, but that was the reality of it. Now, as far as that golf and being the next Tiger Woods, I mean, that was quickly doused. That wasn't going to happen, and that stopped. So a lot of his exercise went away. A lot of the walking that went with golf, he stopped because he had Parkinson's. And the only remnant, actually, we had of golf was he took one of those very expensive putters that he bought, and he made it into his cane. He had balance issues. And so he used that as his cane moving forward. And then those group of friends, well, it got smaller and smaller. Not just because of the demands of kids and our careers back then, but it was just so awkward. Those get-togethers were hard, and he was walking around with a cane. And I could see it when I look at folks we grew up with in high school or college. Like, you can see it in their faces, and they see Jimmy, and they're like, whoa, what happened to him, right? He's got this, what happened to the captain of the football team, very athletic, very charismatic, and now he's walking with a cane. But we didn't talk about Parkinson's, so we didn't mention Parkinson's. It was too hard to explain. I couldn't explain it. So it was very hard. And so we just really didn't have the get-togethers anymore, and we would be the couple that would go home early because it wasn't fun anymore. Not great. And I remember thinking, with my kids, I had to do this alone and now figure it out for them. It was very hard for me. I think one of the biggest things that was difficult was Jimmy had mood swings. And for kids, that was very difficult to understand of what's happening. All of a sudden, daddy's angry, or he doesn't want to play with us. He's kind of just sitting in the corner, and I would make excuses, and I would just say, you know what, why don't we do something else? It's a redirect, distract them from something else, and leave Jimmy to deal with his issues, and take the kids away from it, because I felt like I had to protect them from him and all those emotional things that kids could get easily hurt. But this was a different Jimmy. that I was dealing with. And honestly, from one day to the next, I didn't know if I called it back then PD Jimmy or the Jimmy I used to know. It was unpredictable. It was hard to do it. But I felt like it was all on me. I remember thinking I had to figure this all out on my own. I had to raise the kids alone. I had to be the adult for whatever was going to happen or wherever we were going to go anywhere. I spoke for him in many cases because he didn't want to talk about Parkinson's. I had to make sure that I had a good job so that we can afford everything else. So a lot of the financial burden, instead of being shared as I thought it would be, was now I felt like all on me. Just had to. And then it happened. There's nothing there, but it's because it's hard to picture. It's hard to imagine what this moment was for us, but it was our rock bottom. I was sitting at home with my daughter on the couch watching TV, and I remember seeing Jimmy at the top of the stairs holding my son, and he was going to come down, and I'm thinking, oh, great. He's going to come join us, and we'll have some great family time. But then Jimmy and Mason fell down a whole flight of stairs. My heart stopped. I could not believe what just happened, but in a moment I was up there and checking to see what was going on and if they're okay, but luckily everyone was fine. Jimmy was able to hold Mason up, and he didn't feel a thing. He just thought it was one big fast ride down. So he's a giggling baby, but I looked at Jimmy, and he just had this look, just a resigned look of what just happened. And even though Mason was okay, I had this horrible thought, and I never voiced it out loud, because even now, talking about it, it's just horrible. But I remember thinking, I cannot trust my husband to care for my kids, because he can hurt them, and he can hurt himself. And that's just horrible to have that feeling where in all the time we've been together, like I said, we've been in high school, we had this dream of our married life. I wanted a partner who would help me raise these two kids. And now I'm gonna have to have the conversation where you cannot hold the baby because you might drop him. And that was heartbreaking. I had to figure out what the next step was. But that moment, thankfully, I didn't have to have that conversation with Jimmy, because, and you'll hear, that was his turnaround. That's when things had to change. He took it upon himself to make a change and change the way he lived with Parkinson's. He talked with other people with Parkinson's to learn from. It wasn't just looking at the pamphlet that he got from the doctor's office or trying to search for it online. Wasn't sure if we even had that. But looking to other people that are experts at living with Parkinson's. He signed up for clinical trials, and this is where we learned about new treatments too out there. There's so much things that are going on, but wasn't aware of, because honestly back then, I didn't hear in the news. I didn't hear anything about breakthroughs in Parkinson's. I always heard about breakthroughs in cancer and all of these other diseases, but I didn't hear anything about Parkinson's. But with these clinical trials, I was able to educate myself more and Jimmy as to what felt right for us. And then this is probably the biggest deal for us, was opening it up to our family and friends. It was our coming out of sorts that said, Jimmy has Parkinson's. He has young onset Parkinson's. And we had, as much as we had to educate ourselves that it can happen to somebody as young as 27 years old, it was the same for our families and friends, that it can happen. There is no, there was no cause for it. We don't know why he got it, but just being able to tell people that why he was walking around with that cane, it's not because he was trying to hold on to the last remnants of being the last, the new Tiger Woods or that golf, is he needed it. He needed it for balance. and that's a symptom of Parkinson's. He came out, and that to me, I didn't realize it, but once we shared that with our family and friends, that was such a huge burden lifted off. It felt so much better, just being able to say it out loud, that yes, we have Parkinson's. And you have one conversation, it's hard, but the more you keep talking about it, the easier it gets. And the easier it gets to have, or it's part of the everyday dialogue. Because Parkinson's, it's a big thing, as you guys know. It's daunting, there's a lot of things that goes along with it. And then there's exercise. So I think we talk about it a lot here, but we found out through those clinical trials that exercise slows down the progression of Parkinson's. So Jimmy, he doesn't take on little things, so he started running. And, he did it little by little, but he started running a lot. And there were lots and lots and lots of races. But I saw how much it helped him, deal with the disease, the everyday burdens of Parkinson's, and how much it has made him stronger to deal with the disease. And then there's the care team. We didn't just talk to the doctor twice a year, right? You see the neurologist twice a year. We expanded it to movement disorder specialists, another term I didn't know before. So, but being educated to include that. Physical therapy was another one, occupational therapy. So we started bringing in these other experts to really help them with many different facets of the disease. And there's so many resources out there that I was just thankful that the Parkinson's community has made it available for us. And it's a matter of just reaching out and asking. So that was very, very nice. And then we started fundraising. We started out as part of the Team Fox community, which is the grassroots foundation of the grassroots part of the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and we started out our own 5K, but just doing that, it's expanded our families even more because we've gotten to know more and more folks, and I think that was huge because then it didn't feel like we were alone anymore. It seemed for a very long time we were isolated with Parkinson's, but being part of fundraising events, of other conferences like these, people deal with it, they live well with it, and there's so many resources that we could tap that it doesn't have to be so daunting. So that's a lot. There's a lot to go through. This wasn't an overnight thing, by the way. So this is a slow growth of what makes sense for us. But what was wonderful to watch was the change in Jimmy, because he changed a lot. And gone was the angry Jimmy that I know, or I call the PD Jimmy, that I wouldn't know would show up at any given day. But now this was the Jimmy that I fell in love with back in high school, the one I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, the one I wanted to raise my kids with. And it was so great to see him present and just be a part of our kids' life. And that very social, charismatic, athletic Jimmy that I knew back then it seemed like he was back. So I was grateful for that. And all I could say is, more of this, please. And he started telling me more about his Parkinson's symptoms. So that Parkinson's iceberg, everything below the surface, I started learning more about it. There's a lot of information out there. Dr. Berman, I wish you would have given me the crash course on apathy, because to me that was the symptom that I struggled with as a spouse. I didn't know what apathy was or how it affected people with PD, but him not interested in what we're doing and what the kids were doing, I thought, okay, this is the death of our marriage back then, because he didn't want to be in that life that I had pictured for us. And it was sort of when I started reading more about Parkinson's and understanding apathy, and it was like duh. So now I understand it better, but then the fact that he could articulate to me and share with me these symptoms and how exactly what he wants to or intends to, like he wants to be there for the kids, he wants to be there with me, he wants us to travel again, but it's just very hard. It's very hard with Parkinson's. But just knowing that made me feel so much better that it wasn't me that was causing it. So he really did want to be with me and wanted to be a part of our kids. And that was, to me, just empowering itself to just learn that. Because then I knew, okay, well, what else can I do? Because as he made these changes, I wanted to be a part of it too. I wanted more of this guy that shows up every day in our lives, that's involved in their kids, wants to travel with me like we wanted to, and want him to be there every single day. I didn't want to be in the sidelines anymore and watch him fall apart. I didn't want him to do that rock bottom moment anymore. And really what worked for me, that however 20 plus years into this journey is that, is to be a pacer. I love acronyms, so that's what PACER is, by the way. So I'll give you a glimpse through some pictures of what it's like to be a pacer to endurance athlete Jimmy Choi the last couple of years. So the first is P. P is for partner. And I don't consider myself as a caregiver at this moment because Jimmy is pretty independent as to what he wants to accomplish, but I do consider myself as a partner in managing his symptoms and his medications. So a lot of the things that we talk through anytime he's gonna take on a challenge and how symptoms kind of come about. We talk through like, okay, how do you manage it? Like if he's going through a marathon and he freezes up, what do we do? Or if he's stressed out, I know how to handle it from a situation standpoint. And also what medications to take. When we switched over, I forget which one it was, but I remember a time where we switched medications, and one of the side effects, and I'm glad he told me this, was hallucinations. And if he didn't tell me that was a side effect, I would have been totally freaked out because he kept telling me, Max, can you go walk Max? Now, Max was our dog when we first got married, and he died about 5 years prior to that. So he kept telling me, hey, Max is right there. Can you walk him? He's waiting. And I'm like, there is no Max. So that hallucination, had I not known that was a symptom, I would have been totally freaked out. But together, because we knew this, I told him, honey, it's okay. You're hallucinating. Then we were able to laugh about it. And so it wasn't so scary. And that was, to me, a huge change, being able to talk through all of these other symptoms that were kind of manifesting as the disease was progressing and handling them together. Now, we started having more vacations, and actually, one of the very conscious things we did after getting married and raising the kids as they got older was actually to talk to the kids about Parkinson's. We did not hide that he had Parkinson's. For 5-year-old, 3-year-olds, Parkinson's is a big word to even say, but we did tell them, yes, Daddy has it. And I didn't want them to be scared about it, but also be proactive in helping Daddy, that there are ways that they can do to help Daddy manage his Parkinson's. So back then it was more of the freezing episodes, so he would just stop walking and they have this very questioning look, and I'll just say, it's okay, just wait a few minutes, hold Daddy's hand, and he'll keep going. And he does. Or there could be some situations where they could be out, or he'd want to go out for a bike ride, and Daddy will be very tired, and he won't want to do it, and I'll tell them, we gotta give him some time. He just needs a nap, like sometimes you need naps, and he can take you out in a little bit. So there's that fatigue that happens with Parkinson's. So they know that Daddy needs to take some naps right after lunch, 1 o'clock, that he needs to do that before he can take them out and go for whatever else adventures they're gonna take on that day. So my kids know dystonia, dyskinesia, so they know all those things. They've been growing up with that, and they understand the symptoms of Parkinson's, and they know what they need to do. There are some situations, if I'm not there, typically my daughter's the one training with my husband, she knows that when Daddy needs a moment or when Daddy needs 911. Now, we've never had to call 911, but she has learned to be calm when Daddy has a fall, for example, because that will happen. So she knows how to handle those. She does not freak out, and I'm very grateful for that, because I wanted my kids to be able to help Jimmy in any situation. But like I said, we wanted to keep it as normal as possible, but we wanted to have the fun. And we do, we try. So this was, I'm showing you some pictures, but this was a trip to Disney World, and we all decided to run the Disney 5K, dressed up as the characters of Aladdin, and the whole theme was wishing for a cure. So that was our fun adventure. It was cold and miserable, but Jimmy was game, and he let me paint his face and head blue. So he's all over blue that day. So, like I said, lots of fun. And then A is to become an advocate. I realized that many folks really misunderstood Parkinson's disease. I was one of them. And not a lot of people talked about it in our circles. So we fundraised in our hometown. We started out in our backyard with 300 people of our friends and family, raised $10,000. Since then, we've grown it to about 1,000 participants every year. It's now a staple in our hometown. Actually, ours will be in 2 weeks for our Shake It Off. And then during the pandemic, we did Movember for PD. So not a lot of people can come on site, so we did it all social media and tried to raise awareness that way. So it was fun to seeing everybody participate, different parts of the world. And as Lauren mentioned, to date, we have raised $800,000 for Parkinson's research. Thank you. So C is for cheerleader. You'll learn later on that Jimmy took on a lot of athletic challenges, lots of marathons, half marathons. I was always on hand because I was the backup meds in case he dropped them. But snacks as well. So I was there for all of it. I was there cheering on an American Ninja Warrior, which is right up on top. It looks like I'm cheering there, but inside I was so nervous. This was the most nerve-wracking thing overall. I mean, who knew I was going to marry the reality TV personality? And then E is for empower. This is probably the hardest one that I've had to do. So as Jimmy took on different ways to challenge his body or understand it, there's a lot of learning his limits. And one of the biggest things for, I think, a care partner or caregiver is letting them fail. But I thought that was key. He needed to understand that for himself, so I empower him to fail. And how I do that is you give him safe places where he could. So it's the ninja gym where they can fall and get up, and there's mats, and there are people who can coach him through and move his body the right way. But that's key, is you empower them to fail. Now, this is one of my favorite pictures that we have. I don't like taking pictures typically, but somebody caught this for us. This was a race that Jimmy took on for Spartan. This was up in Lake Tahoe. He had trained for it at home, but nothing really prepared him for the conditions that that was really going to come during that time. It was freezing cold. It's 14 miles of track with 26 obstacles that he had to go through to finish it. And he had a time in his head of how he wanted to finish it. And he said, I'm not sure I could do it. I met him somewhere down the path, and he said, I don't know if I could do it. And I just said, it doesn't matter. You're already here. You did it. So just finish. Just finish however it takes, whatever it takes to get through it. And he's like, but I don't want to have to do burpees. And I'm like, well, if you have to do them, just do them. So the reasoning for the burpees is that if you fail an obstacle, you have to do 30 burpees. And one of the things I caught up to him is that he had to swim through in freezing cold waters. Like one of the obstacles was swimming through, and everything froze up. So all his muscles, he was just like this the whole time, and he's trying to walk. And I just told him, just finish it. Just walk through it. And he's like, everything's frozen. I don't know if I could keep going. There were 4 more obstacles that he had to go through. And I said, just take your time. Whatever time you had, forget about it. So I waited. I think it was another hour before I would see him. But I did see him off into the distance for the last obstacle. I was waiting at the finish line. And he had to go through some sort of arms and cross it. I saw him go through it. Not a problem at all, and he crossed the finish line. He hobbled, so he was frozen because his right side affected, and this was the moment where I caught him. And I was just so proud of him because he did it. He finished, like we said, we talked about it. And I said, congratulations, honey. And all he said to me was, 0 burpees. That was all his sentiment. That's all he cared about. So no matter what, get it to the finish line. And lastly, R is to repeat. This is now my mantra on how I live life with Parkinson's. This is our life routine, our new normal. I've watched our kids grow up with a father who's always present in their lives. I have a partner in life who I'm so proud of every day, and I will continue to advocate, cheer on, and empower for the rest of my days. And yes, we still have a dog. Her name is Holly. So you see her there. And Parkinson's is still there, but I changed how I think about it and my mindset about it. I can still have that life I wanted. I thought so in the beginning, but now I think about it in different colors, and I get to. It's not I had to, I get to. I get to be in this moment with him, the good, the bad, the ugly, of Parkinson's. I get to choose. There is a choice in how you live with PD. And surprisingly, it has enriched our lives. It's branched off into different ways in how our lives, our friends, our careers, and health-wise, of course, we talked about exercise and, fun. We found different ways of having fun and incorporating that into our lives and making sure it's a fulfilling one. So, with that, that was my pacer life with Parkinson's and how I choose to live. That PD journey is daunting, but we've really learned a new way to live well with it. I hope you can apply this to yourself, whether as a partner in your relationship with someone with Parkinson's, and whatever your support role, you can be a partner, an advocate, cheer on and empower, and repeat all of the above for your person with Parkinson's as they take on that PD journey. And with that, I leave you with 2 questions. How do you live, or how do you picture your life with Parkinson's, and what do you get to do today? Thank you. And thanks for bearing with me before lunch.
Right.
Not sure we have time for questions, but thank you so much. Thank you. I'll be around if you guys have questions, but we'll follow up with more afterwards. Thank you.